If you don't know what the Elestrals Championship League is, check out the announcement video on LUCK's channel, linked up in the card below, down in the description. It'll answer all the questions you have, and then you can come back here for my deck profile. So this week, I'll be facing off against Wirtz, who is piloting Earth for my first official game. I feel like I have a bit of an advantage here because I've seen one of his lists and how he's kind of been playing Earth, at least for one match, while he's got no information on how I'm going to play what I've been kind of brewing up. So I'm hoping to kind of use that a bit to my advantage here. We'll see if that actually pays off. So when designing this deck, I looked at what Wirtz brought last week, and it was a Nexus-focused package using like Altar of Stars with Equal Links and Clovey to draw a ton of cards and other stuff like Circle the Sky, just to move around spirits a lot, be able to get a lot of aggression out of nowhere, have good rune control, as well as draw power. While that might not be what he's bringing this week against me, because I do have a lot of rune control, one thing I did notice is that some of Wirtz's strongest pieces do rely on the spirits being on board through the Stadium, Divine Room, the Artifact. Equal Links is the obvious example, being able to Nexus Spirits, Tectoros to be able to make itself big, but also in general, players just like to play out counter runes to try to slow down the opponent, so having a deck like Earth that likes to use those on top of just having spirits out on board means that rune removal, I feel like, is going to be really strong and can be really disruptive. As such, part of my game plan revolves around Fowlicane here. I feel like if I can catch Wirtz off guard when he has a big back row just full of even just set cards, but maybe a Demeter or a Scythe, I can just blow it all up with Fowlicane and get a huge card advantage swing. And Fowlicane also has that 7 attack, meaning it can actually aggress unimpeded because, well, I got rid of all my opponent's runes. I did debate other rune control strategies by taking a page out of Wirtz's book and utilize the when received is Spirit win card in P-Gust because it is rune removal, but the problem I see with this card is that it just has no offensive pressure. I really need the offensive pressure to then challenge the opponent's Elestrals, especially when I've gotten rid of all my opponent's abilities to disrupt it during my turn. But yeah, the general idea is I just blow up the board with Fowlicane and then use all my good stuff Elestrals to just try to gain control of the pace of the game, taking out Wirtz's Elestrals, and if I can get a head on board, I can then utilize P-Gust to continue with the rune control. But getting into the card by card, for the 2 spirits, I have 2 Fowlicane, 1 Twindra. The Fowlicane, because that's the main focus, is the best way to disrupt the board. It is an Ascension, and it still gets hit by stuff such as Gorgon's Gaze and the Poison Tip Arrow, but Gorgon's Gaze is probably going to be the most devastating, but at least I got Wirtz to use 2 spirits and use it, while Poison Tip Arrow, I can still blow up the rest of the board even if I do lose my Fowlicane, and it still costs a lot of spirits, so I think this is going to be a big swing card if I see it. I just don't want to brick on it, so I think 2 copies will be enough. And also, if I don't see it, I can just try to play and force Wirtz to use runes, which means he's using spirits, which is great, and I have an answer for that as well. The Twindra is here because I do run Hydrakes, so this just makes a good aggressive / tempo play to keep up on board, just being able to hopefully crash the Hydrake, it will trade for something, and then go into a Twindra and either attack another Elestral on board or just get into spirits seems really appealing to me, but only 1 because I don't want to rely on it too much, and I don't think it'll be too consistent, and I don't really want to just sacrifice Hydrake just to get out a Twindra, and like the difference in attack really isn't that much. But it's just there if it ever comes up. For the 1 Spirit Elestrals, I run 3 Aramare, 1 Exaltair, 2 Hydrake, 3 P-Gust, and 3 Sorlet. So one thing that Win definitely lacks is just generically good Elestrals with good stat lines and whatnot. So the 3 Aramare, P-Gust, and Sorlet shouldn't be too surprising, as these cards are highly splashable in other elements and are just really good cards. Aramare for that solid stat line. I don't think its effect's going to be too relevant in this matchup. P-Gust for rune removal, and then Sorlet just being able to trade into most Elestrals, at most having to expend a wind. And because my opponents cannot run wind spirits, that means Sorlet can freely use its effect against any of my opponents, which makes Sorlet just very scary for answering Elestrals. The 2 Hydrake are here just because I need more Elestrals, and Hydrake's not a bad one for the Twindra play, and 4 attack is fine, and as you see down here, I do run Stadium being able to make it a 5 attacker, so it's just my second best way to answer an Elestral on board. And again, as I explained with Twindra, I do have some plays with it if it ever comes up, just to kind of get some extra aggression, some extra board control, whatever I need. And the nice thing is that I can search this out with the Aeolus here. I don't expect to be the biggest search target, but hey, it's there if I need it. And then 1 Exaltair, just because the burn 2 and be able to accelerate 2 Wind Spirits onto board can be a bit cheeky to get some extra aggression or just close out a game. Only 1 copy because the only time I plan to use this is if I have an Aeolus, and there honestly is no better play but to go Exaltair. I need more of an aggressive, proactive play, because most of these guys are more reactive with Sorlet and P-Gust. So just being able to catch Wirtz when he either just doesn't have a set rune on, or a set card on board, maybe no Elestrals, or I have like Island of Aeolia and Exaltair with 2 extra spirits can hit over it, I can do some fun shenanigans with this with Aeolus, search out Exaltair, just go full 4 spirits, accelerate 2 on Exaltair, burn words for 2, and then have Exaltair be 6 attack under Island and attack for 2. And if I don't have Island, if words say I poison to dared the Elestral, Exaltair can still hit in for up to 3 damage for a really strong aggressive play that kind of needs a response from words. I also hope to keep this in mind to kind of steal some wins if words isn't expecting it in the late game, just because with words may possibly running some lower attack stuff, if he has something in attack that Exaltair can hit over, he might not be paying too much attention to his spirits to respect the fact that Exaltair can burn for 2 and then accelerate those spirits onto board to deal that extra damage. I might just be able to steal wins with it. I don't expect to really be able to steal wins from it just off of its expend 2 effect alone. I think that words might try to play around, but with the combination of accelerating 2 spirits support, I think I can pull out something cheeky to just steal a win that I might not have gotten otherwise. Moving over to the runes, the win specific runes, I run 3 Aeolus and 3 Island of Aeolia. The Aeolus should be pretty self-explanatory, especially with only a 12 1-spirit Elestral lineup. Aeolus is going to be very helpful to grab pieces, and because my pieces are more board state specific as opposed to generically good, like I think Aramir is the only one I can claim is generically good, Aeolus just helps me find the piece that I need for the exact scenario. So this one just made sense at 3 copies, as well as having some nice synergies with some Exaltair shenanigans. And I can always just throw on 2 spirits and get the 1 search and just exchange it if need be. And those 2 spirit plays might be relevant as with where it's having equal links. Sometimes I might not be able to safely allow Aeolus to stick, so I just want to get the 1 search and not lose more spirits than I need to. The 3 Island of Aeolia is just because I expect words to run Floy Forest, and this card, on top of just giving my Celestial stat buffs, destroys his forest, so I can get a good pop 1 and just kind of that stadium control as well is really nice. It's technically another Nexus target for Exaltair, if ever relevant. I don't expect it to be. Most of the time, I expect it just to be able to increase the attack of my Elestrals, which I do need because Earth has some great offensive Elestrals at 4 and 5 attack, with also some scary defense as well. So Island is going to be very crucial to help my Elestrals hit over those. So I expect to hold it when I just need that extra stat boost and can possibly get rid of his forest. I think the counter runes are going to be very crucial as well to keep up offensively with Warts, since again, his Elestrals are better at combat than mine, but being able to disrupt them is going to be huge. 3 Gorgon's Gaze, 3 Poison Tip Arrow, 3 Shield of Achilles. These ones are just going to be the best ones to deal with it. Gorgon's Gaze can stop equal links with its Nexus shenanigans. Poison Tip Arrow can just destroy the Elestral, meaning that I can leave Warts with nothing on board to do some plays. And then Shield of Achilles, I think, is probably the worst one, just because Poison Tip Arrow and Gorgon's Gaze can answer equal links, but Shield cannot. It's just easy bait for equal links to Nexus and destroy, but it's still there in case for when Warts doesn't go equal links, and I can still try to keep up on tempo if absolutely necessary. The only other counter rune I could run is Alter, but frankly, I don't think Alter, it requires a bit too much setup in this deck, and I'd rather use the deck space for other stuff, more cards to help me consistently keep up than Alter when I think most of the time will be hard to allow it to stick and use its effect. And then rounding off the deck, we got the Invoke runes, 3 Ambrosia, 2 drops, 3 Nectar, 2 Laurels. So 3 Ambrosia because this deck is a bit expensive and has no other recovery. Aeolus expend 2 to be able to search. We got the Fowlicane expend 1, possibly expend 2 if I really want to keep my own runes up. This all adds up, and my heavy counter rune usage as well. So I think Ambrosia, just to try to recover or net back 2 spirits, is going to be crucial to not just lose because my deck's too expensive compared to Words. And then for the draw power, 3 Nectar I think is the best one here, just to draw into extra cards. I expect to not need too much of a hand reshuffle a lot of the times. A lot of times I imagine it's going to be a good mixture of cards I either want to keep or I'm using. So I think just being able to get that extra draw power, because my deck doesn't have any, it has search power with Aeolus, but it doesn't just have draw power. So I think Nectar is going to be great to keep up in card advantage. When Wirtz has Nectar on top of Clovey, he can do Drataya draw power as well. So I think Nectar just makes a lot of sense. And then 2 drops because I am running some 2 costs. So to be able to mainly shuffle back in the Twindra if I brick a lot, or maybe I just have drawn too many Aeolus Island, or like also the scenario where my hand is just not good for being able to answer Words' board. Drops can shuffle it all back in and try to draw into an actual answer, just kind of as an emergency button if need be, on top of just maybe early game I just don't have the cards I want to see. This card is great for that. And finally, 2 Laurels, since Wirtz is his deck benefits from having multiple spirits on board. Resting on your Laurels is my best way to just pop it, clear the board, so I'm not necessarily relying on my Elestrals. And also the problem with answering with Elestrals can be running into counter runes, so Laurels just means that I can deal with it. Only 2 because I specifically have to be behind, and sometimes that won't be the case, so I think 2 is just enough for that reason. Of course, for the Spirit deck, just have my 20 Lycris, because that's all I'm allowed to run. So for the side deck, I'm running a few kind of side-in cheese packages to try to catch Wirtz off guard. The first one you notice is Pantera, so I round out my playset of Hydrakes, Twindras, and then 2 Panteras. I don't expect to side this in, but the idea behind it is, if I feel like Wirtz's deck isn't the best equipped to deal with Pantera, I can maybe try to steal a game 3 from him by doing something unexpected. Instead of playing more of the control grind game, which is what my deck's trying to do, I can play something very aggressive, just crash Hydrake, crash Twindra, get out Pantera, tell Wirtz to deal with it, and even if he does with, say, Earthquake, his most common answer, I just get to spit out a board of a bunch of Twindras and Hydrakes and just aggress there. They're not the best statted, but it's a ton of spirits accelerated onto the board really quickly, and I'm hoping that can just overwhelm Wirtz, and I can still have stuff like Island help modulate attacks if necessary. My problem with going into Pantera is I feel like Wirtz's deck is one of the best ones equipped to answer it, not just with Earthquake, but his deck can definitely gain the most attack out of any deck with Demeter, Scythe, Tectoros, and last week Wirtz's deck was running Altar of Stars, and if he alters a Pantera, it's even easier for him to attack over it. So I don't love it, but it's still, again, this is just in case the deck he brings this week is a bit different, and I feel like that extra aggressive oomph can just catch him off guard. I think the big question will also be how much back row and specifically counter runes is he's running, because if he's run, especially if he sides in like Gorgon's Gaze, that can get a bit scary for Pantera, and I don't think it's out of the realm possibility that Wirtz does that just because of Fowlicane. The other reason I run 2 Pantera is because if I do think Pantera is a good threat for it, I don't think it's too unrealistic to think that Wirtz might be able to answer 1 pretty well, and just having the second Pantera, mainly it's for, there's chances with this deck that sometimes I'll be able to, say, stick an Exaltair with 2 spirits and using its Nexus, and then I can ascend into Pantera from hand. So now Wirtz has to deal with 1 Pantera, and if he does deal with it, I can go Hydrake, Twindra, and to another Pantera, because ideally he would answer it with combat, go into another Pantera, and I think at that point it's going to be really hard for Wirtz to deal with 2 if I side this in. Again, if I think he can easily deal with it, I'm not doing it. Bag of Winds is another funny inclusion, only at 2, just because I want to include some other things in the side deck, and honestly, I don't want to brick on 3, because Bag of Winds means Earthquake and Resting Your Laurels cannot touch Pantera. So if Wirtz is going for a deck that maybe isn't as focused on attack gain, I don't know if he will. I don't think he will because of Sorlight, but if he does, Bag of Winds is going to be really funny with Pantera. If I can set this up, it might just be game. I think at that point only shield answers it, but if I can find a P-Gust at that point, I can just not attack with Pantera, find my P-Gust and pop it. The other kind of mini package I'm running is an extra Exaltair if I really feel like I need that extra aggressive oomph. 1 Exaltair for earlier in the game, and then 1 to close out the game. And then that's another reason to maybe include Bag of Winds in the deck as an extra Nexus target, just because I won't always be able to find that 2 Aeolus to set up both Exaltairs. One reason I'm a bit iffy on Bag of Winds is because Wirtz can easily gain attack, that kind of rune protection, extra defense, I think is pretty negligible in my deck. I think Wirtz will be able to pretty easily attack over stuff. And Bag of Winds, like at that point, I'm demanding Bag of Winds plus a counter rune. Don't know why that took so long to get out. So it's really 2 cards that I need to be able to protect my Elestral, and still then I have to be able to answer it next turn. It's just this, it sounds good in theory, but I think in practicality it's not going to be too consistent, especially with something like Equal Links that can, especially if I don't have a Gorgon's Gaze, can always just choose to pop the Bag of Winds as well. So I don't love it. That's just more here for like if I really need some more Nexus targets. Maybe for whatever reason I think it might pair well with Pantera. It can be good. I don't expect it to be, but I think it's still worth running in the side for these synergies if I see the opportunity to take advantage of it. And kind of rounding out this more Nexus package, I run 2 Circle the Skies. An extra draw card isn't bad. Being able to accelerate spirits means it's extra aggression, and notably, it can synergize well with P-Gust. So such as searching Aeolus, P-Gust, and then using Circle to move spirits from Aeolus to P-Gust to pop extra runes is one thing, but also for the extra spirits to get some extra aggression, it synergizes well with Island of Aeolia, being able to pump up an Elestral by possibly +3/+3, though I usually expect maybe like +2/+2, getting 1 extra spirit on it, making P-Gus actually a 5 attack. It's pretty scary when you're popping their disruption tools. So it's just there for some extra synergies if I think it's worthwhile. It does require a bit of setup, and it might just be a dead card in hand if I don't specifically have Aeolus, because I really don't want an Nexus off of Island, because it's my attack gain card, and attack is super important in this deck. Rounding off the side deck, I do run the 1 drops. If I go the Pantera package, that means I'm running more bricks, so I'm going to want drops to shuffle them back in and try to find some different cards. I think at that point, just a better hand quality over card advantage is more important, so I'd switch the ratio of Nectar and drops, or maybe I might run 3 and 3 just to be able to find my pieces, depending on how aggressive I want to go. And resting on your laurels is here if Wirtz is playing a really aggressive deck that pushes a lot of spirits out on board. This can help me just clear the Elestral, especially if I can't go into Fowlicane at that point. I can easily laurels and P-Gus to try to start chipping away at those runes. It's a nice play to have, or honestly just laurels and then throw out an Elestral and try to force Wirtz to start using his runes. It's also quite nice. So just a 3rd copy if I find it's coming up more than the 2 copies, more frequently than me being able to find my 2 copies. But that is my deck list and strategy. Frankly, I think I'm going to have to play really, really well to be able to compete with Wirtz. Earth is such a strong element by itself. I mean, it's the only element that has seen a really successful mono-type package so far in set 1. And while Wirtz does lose some utility tools with it, he's still got the core ones that just kind of touch different aspects. It's kind of a jack-of-all-trades kind of element right now. Rune destruction with equal links. Earthquake for Elestral destruction, a massive amount attack gain, some defensive gain as well. Draw power in Clovey and Drataya, recovery with Scythe, synergies with Ambrosia for more recovery for draw power, and just Omni destruction as well. And what else? There's so much more. Board swarming with Viscerus. I mean, the list goes on and on. So the thing is, all his cards I think do a lot and are highly synergistic with each other, but knowing that he's going to want to kind of combine a ton of cards together, that's what I'm trying to take advantage of. Try to take advantage to swing card advantage in my favor, and hopefully try to knock a lot of tools out of Wirtz. Because one thing I noticed from his game with Johnny, he loved to set a lot of stuff. And while that was okay against Johnny because he didn't have rune disruption, I'm hoping that maybe he might try to do that to maybe hide his counter runes, and I can really take advantage of that card advantage, him losing tools to help answer stuff. So that is my main goal here. I'm going to be at top of my game, play very well, try not to make any misplays. So let's see how that ends out. So again, you can check out the gameplay. It'll be up tomorrow at 10 a.m. EST, along with everyone else's gameplay. I'll be doing my usual post commentary, so you can also check out Wirtz's side to see just our live interaction. Well, not live, but live at the time of recording that. But I want to hear from you all down in the comments below. What do you think of my deck list? Do you think I'm off the mark at anything? Do you think I'm kind of spot on for tackling Earth? What would you run if you were facing off against Mono Earth with Mono Wind? As always, love the interaction down below with you all. With that being said though, look forward to the gameplay. First week for me, week 2 for the whole tournament, coming out tomorrow, 10 a.m. EST.